Welcome everybody to our latest PetsApp Together session in partnership with SPVS. We've got a fantastic session put together for you by the wonderful Claire Grigson and Katie Ford from Vet Empowered, and I'm going to hand straight over to you guys, and I can't wait to participate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Naomi, for having us. Always a pleasure, and huge thanks to PetsApp and SPVS for making this possible this evening. So we're going to be diving into a topic that has been really popular, not only in the veterinary profession, but beyond, and that is empowerment. So we're going to not only talk about that in terms of what it is, but how you can empower your team as well. So for anyone that's catching up on the recording as well, please do take a moment when we ask questions to reflect on those things too. And with that, we're going to start off with asking our first question here, which is, who here remembers a leader who empowered you? So please do let us know in the chat box if you remember somebody that empowered you when you were in practice, however long ago that was, might be recent, might be a long time ago. Do you remember a leader who has empowered you? So in the bottom right-hand side of Google, you should be able to see a little chat icon, and you should be able to send a message in there, all being well. So we'll see if we've got anything popping up on there as well. But let's just use this as an opportunity to see how exciting it is for us to empower other people as well. So I can see some of you are still joining, but Claire, while everyone's typing, I know the answer will be yes, but I'd love to know, do you remember a leader who has empowered you?
Yeah, absolutely. And my very first boss when I was a new graduate vet really empowered me when it came to surgery, in terms of just saying, like, you can absolutely do this, you've got this, giving me opportunity to try things and really trusting in my skill set. Even when I was maybe doubting it a little bit myself, it's scary, right? When we step into practice for the first time and we're putting all these things into practice. But just having somebody who I knew really believed in me as a human made such a difference to my first experience of being a vet as a new graduate. And we've still got a lovely relationship to this day. We still keep in touch as friends, which is really, really lovely. But yeah, I'm very, very grateful to my first boss because he really did believe in me when I was a new graduate, and I needed that.
I think that's testament to the impact that we can have when we look at how we can empower our team members. I gave a very similar presentation back in November last year to a group of veterinary leaders, and we asked the group who remembers a leader that empowered them. And I asked, who remembers them 5 years ago, from 5 years ago? Loads of people in the room. Which of you was that leader 10 years ago? Still loads of people. And for some people, it was 30 years ago that they remember the time that they spent with a leader and the difference that it made to them to feel empowered. So this is where it gets to be exciting, beyond what we think of leadership as being, to see what an impact that we can have moving forward as well. So we wanted to do a quick introduction to us as well. So Naomi very kindly introduced us as being Katie and Claire from Vet Empowered, but we want to tell you just a little bit more about us and why we're talking to you about this topic this evening. So we're not going to share our full stories because we've got a lot to get through with you, but just as some insights for this evening. My name's Katie. I am an experienced veterinary surgeon. I retrained as a coach about 7 years ago. I've been working one-to-one with people in the profession and came together with Claire in 2020 to form Vet Empowered. But when I was in practice, I was in leadership roles. I had a lot of different roles within clinical practice, as well as now doing a lot outside of clinical practice, and importantly, putting everything into action that we're going to be talking about this evening as well. So I'm going to hand to Claire to tell you a little bit more about her, and then I'll tell you a bit about what we provide at Vet Empowered, and you'll see shortly why we're so passionate about what we do.
Absolutely. So for those of you who don't know me, I am Claire. I have been a veterinary surgeon for almost 18 years now, which, saying out loud, I'm like, oh my goodness, where has the time gone? I've also been in leadership positions. I've spent a large proportion of my career in charity practice, and I diversified into coaching round about 5 years ago. So like Katie, I've also coached others in the profession one-to-one. We've of course got Vet Empowered as well. And something that I'm really, really passionate about is empowering others to find a sustainable and fulfilling path in this profession. And like Katie, helping them to remember their inherent value beyond roles, responsibility and job titles. So we're really, really excited for the content that we're going to be sharing tonight, because it makes such a huge difference, both for us, but for our teams as well.
And we came together because we were absolutely so aligned with what we do. So we started Vet Empowered in 2020. Since then, we've run amazing transformational group programs, which have still been going back since 2020. We go into practices, we run workshops, we work one-to-one with vets, vet nurses, members of the profession in general, because we are so passionate about handing the power back to individuals, just in terms of what we're going to be talking about this evening as well. So you're in good hands. 3 of our main values at Vet Empowered are authenticity. So we're going to be really real with you in here as well. We will not tell you to do something that we are not prepared to do ourselves. Secondly, compassion, really about helping other people and acknowledging that we are human, all of us. So there is not going to be any ivory tower moments here. It is very much about real actionable steps and energy too. And hopefully it comes across in the session just how passionate we are about what we do here at Vet Empowered. So we're going to be talking empowerment. So before we dive in, it's really important to us just to talk about this space that we're setting here on the topic of remembering that we are all human. And I'm going to hand to Claire to do that for us.
Absolutely. So whenever we run any session, we always like to set the space first. And we would really love you to bring curiosity to the session and leave judgment at the door. And what we mean by this is, as we move through the session, you might start to notice, oh goodness, I've thought that way, or oh goodness, I've done that before. And we encourage you to see this through the lens of curiosity rather than criticism, and seeing as, okay, this is interesting information that I'm getting here, showing ourselves some kindness. Everyone is individual, and that is brilliant. Every single person in this room tonight is different in terms of what they value, what's important to them, and we get to celebrate that. If anything comes up over the course of this session and you need to take a step back, that's absolutely okay. And everything we talk about here takes practice. It's not like a light switch that we flick on and we're like, all of a sudden I feel empowered in every single interaction I have. All of this takes practice and consistency. And just a reminder as well that seeking additional help and support is not only encouraged, but it's celebrated. All of us at different points in our career need support, and that is okay. We're always going to celebrate that here at Vet Empowered.
Yeah, 100%. So let us dive in. So we see the word empowered out there a lot at the moment. People are saying empowerment, let's get our teams empowered. This is all about us empowering veterinary nurses, empowering new graduates, veterinary surgeons. But what do we actually mean? Because let's face it, we obviously like the term empowered because we named our business after that. It's gone down quite well. But we'd love to ask all of you, what does empowered mean to you? Now, we should, if the power of technology would like to work, have on screen right now a Slido poll, which means that you can grab your phone and scan that QR code, or if you go to slido.com in a new tab and put in PetsApp VE, you should then be able to pop in an answer. And we'd love for you to take a moment. I can see somebody's put confident, but this is a really valuable thing for us to do, for us to take a second and consider, what does empowered mean to us right now? So that then we can start to challenge our own views of what that could mean as well as we go through. So we're going to give a second as people are typing on there. You should absolutely be able to pop your answers in. I can see we've got quite a few of you on the call. If you prefer to pop it in the chat box or direct message it to Claire or I, please do that. But it'd be really helpful for us to get some answers up on there. What does empowered mean to you? And we'll see what we've got coming up.
Amazing. We've got lots coming up. I love it when they all come up at once. We've got
Wonderful.
Freedom to be authentic. Love that. Got motivated, inspired, confident, being true to myself. Love all of these. Got
Confident but supported.
Yep. Supported again. Love that. Freedom coming up for a second time. Inspired. Amazing. Able to make decisions. Absolutely.
Wonderful.
I like that on Slido we can see the typing. That's nice, isn't it? When we do it on Zoom, we're like, we can't see when people are typing. We don't know if anyone's putting anything on.
Oh, no, so thank you so much, everyone, for answering there as well. I love seeing that we've got a lot of common threads coming up here as well as we go through that. So anybody that is watching back on the recording, please do take a minute as well to consider, what does empowered mean to you? And we're going to go a little bit more into that in a second. So when we head to the dictionary definition of empowered, we do get a rather lengthy definition, which we'll come to in a second. But essentially, if we bring it to its bare bones, being empowered means to give power to someone or to feel as if we have brought our power back to us. So empowered describes having both internal confidence and external resources, authority and capabilities needed to take meaningful action and make impactful choices. And that encompasses feeling equipped with knowledge, skills, autonomy, while also having the actual power and support systems and opportunities to effectively pursue our goals and create positive change, which is quite a mouthful, and we never expected anybody to put that into Slido. But you can see that as we're thinking about empowering ourselves, but also empowering our teams, helping them to have that confidence, helping them know what their resources are, what do they have the authority to do, reminding them of their capabilities, equipping them with knowledge and skills, but also gifting them the opportunities for autonomy, helping them know what those support systems are, providing those opportunities, and also getting to know what their goals are and what positive changes they'd like to make too. So we wanted to ask another question now, which is, why is now an important time to empower our team? So we might be talking through this to you as a leader, or it might be that you are a team member, but this is a really important question for us to ask regardless. Like, why now? Why is now a good time? So we should be able to have that pop up on the screen while people start typing, and we'll keep doing a little refresh on that. So I'd love to know from everyone that's on the call right now, why is now a good time for us to empower our teams? And we'll see what everybody comes up with.
Amazing. We've got people typing. The anticipation.
Retention. And that's really interesting that you mentioned that, because so often when people come through our signature group coaching program in particular, a lot of people start the program in the exploration of, I think I want to leave this profession. And so many of them by the end of it say, you know what, I realized that I didn't need to leave. I just needed to tweak a few things and realign with what was important to me. So yeah, that's a huge one. Oh, we've got lots of them coming up. Retention, yes. What else have we got on there, Claire?
We've got to enable development. I love that one. Job satisfaction. Absolutely, people are more likely to stay when they feel satisfied and fulfilled in their role. To make them feel valued, yes, such an important one. Team bonding, and need new ideas to increase football in practice. Love these. These are brilliant.
See if we've got any more coming through. Wonderful. So one of the reasons we believe that empowerment is something for the now is because lots of amazing people feel disempowered at the moment. And that's for all manner of different reasons. So we know that every single member of our team, every single person on this call, every person in this profession is different. But a lot of people feel as if that power is being taken away from them. And that might be for all manner of reasons. That might be past experiences where they felt as if they haven't had any power to make decisions, any power to pursue what's of interest to them. And understandably so, sometimes people just give up in that sense of things. The current financial climate obviously is bringing challenges right now, staffing and retention challenges, people feeling not good enough in general, people feeling stuck, work-life harmony challenges, the narratives around social media. And we might never know the full story about why somebody feels disempowered in that moment. But there are so many people out there. And this is just a snippet of a list of some of those reasons why people feel disempowered right now. But actually, there are incredible things that we can do to help bring power back to some of our team members and also to ourselves as well. But we wanted to give this important reminder as well, didn't we, Claire?
Absolutely. And we want to give this reminder at the beginning that we can't change other people, but we can absolutely positively influence and empower them. So what we want to be doing as leaders is to be able to inspire change in our team rather than forcing it. Nobody enjoys being forced to do anything. And empowerment really starts with self-leadership. It starts with how we're choosing to show up. And people change. People will make change when they feel safe, when they feel valued, and when they feel heard. And that is part of feeling empowered, is feeling that you feel safe, you feel valued, you feel heard, you're able to make those changes. So I think that's really important to remember. Otherwise, we can feel frustrated. We're like, well, why aren't they doing this? Or they need to change that. We can't ever change anybody else, but we can step into self-leadership.
So when we look at, okay, but how are we going to make that happen? We broke this down into 3 separate areas. And let's face it, this could have been a whole 6-month course in itself, because all of these things take time. But the first thing was us looking at role modeling and self-exploration, just as Claire said. Secondly, looking at how we can create an empowering, safe environment. As much as we can influence safety is going to feel different to everyone, and we're going to go more into all of these areas very shortly. And the third one is during our interactions and during our encouragement. So all of these things we can apply to us looking at empowering our teams, but all of these things can apply to empowering ourselves as well. One of the things that we want to just add in here is that whenever we are building empowerment in ourselves or our teams, it does take some of these ingredients as well. It is a process. We are building that one step at a time, and that's going to take time. It's going to take patience, support, consistency, and compassion as well. So first things first, there are sometimes 2 sneaky traps that can pop in that when we're trying to help empower other people, these things can come up and we might not even notice that they're a challenge that appears. And knowing about them means that we can do something about them ahead of time, and we can also empower ourselves as well. So we wanted to talk to you about 2 concepts before we go back to those 3 main points of how we can start to empower ourselves and our teams. And the first one is about the Cartman drama triangle. So I'd love to know in the chat box if anyone can pop anything in there. Has anybody come across this before? Just pop me a yes or a no into the comments in the bottom right hand side of Google Meet. You should be able to type something in there. And if for any reason we're not getting anything in there, nope, we've got a no. Let's see. Give a second, see if anyone else is going to pop anything in there as well. I'm not sure whether everyone can pop things in the chat or not, so we'll give you a second. Wonderful. So we're going to run through this anyway. This is a really important dynamic for us to be aware of. So I'm going to explain the 3 parts of this. So the Cartman drama triangle isn't about us giving people labels. It's almost like a strange 3-player game that can start, and any of us can end up in any of these 3 positions at any point. And it's like a dynamic between 3 people. Being aware of it means that we can kind of decline the invitation to be part of it, and we can see where we can make a positive change. So I'm going to show you now these 3 roles, and then I'm going to explain how you might see that play out in practice, and importantly, talk about some of the things that we can do if we find ourselves in that dynamic as well. So essentially, we've got 3 roles. As we say, we've got the persecutor, we've got the rescuer, we've got the victim, and I'm going to talk about what each of those 3 are in just a second. As we've said, it's not that we always play one of them or we always play the other. We've probably all been all of them at some point. Again, we've always told you we're going to be real, we're going to be human here. So the victim is when we might find ourselves in that position of saying, why me? There's nothing that I can do about this. Why does this always happen to me? Now, whenever there's a victim, there tends to be someone that is a persecutor. So this is someone that's saying, maybe this is your fault, or they're maybe quite rigid, quite superior, quite blaming. And none of this is about real or actual victims. This is more about when someone ends up in that position of feeling very disempowered. Now, then what happens if you've got someone who's a victim, you've got someone who is a perceived persecutor, we then tend to have someone that steps into the role of being the rescuer. So they're the one that steps into this, you poor thing, I'll help you, I want to fix this, and feeling guilty if they don't help. And again, doing all of this without judgment, because I'm sure that Claire will agree with this, and I know lots of you on the call, there's quite a tendency for us to step into a rescuer role where we see some hardship being done, as it were, and saying, you know what, I'm going to sort this out for this person. But actually, often what that can do is it can reinforce the message that that person is a victim and they need saving or they need rescuing. There's a better way for us to approach this, which you'll see in just a second as well. So this in practice might play out sometimes that you end up, there's been a disagreement or there's been an argument, and maybe someone else feels that they need to come in and save the person that is in that victim stance from said persecutor. But there's a different way that we can approach this. So just a quick disclaimer that there might be part of a, like, let's notice the part that we're tempted to play in this, but it's not about us saying, oh, you're playing the victim or you're playing the persecutor or you're playing this person or that person. It's about us noticing which of those roles, if we see, oh my gosh, I've got this tendency to want to rescue in this situation, or maybe I found myself as the bad guy, the persecutor here, or maybe I feel as if there's nothing that I can do and I'm feeling kind of why me, then we can look at the things that we can do that are in our control in a second, that we can flip the role that we're in rather than having to change what anybody else is doing. Because you need 3 people to play this game, and if we refuse to step into it, then it changes the whole dynamic, which you'll see in just a second. So what does this have to do with empowerment? Well, essentially, we can flip the drama triangle, the Cartman drama triangle, into the empowerment triangle. And this is a well-known concept in psychology. So essentially, the persecutor becomes the challenger. I'm going to talk through that in a minute. The victim becomes the creator, and the rescuer becomes the coach. So you'll see that essentially that means that if we find ourselves in that role of being made out to be the bad guy or the persecutor, we can say, look, we're here to call everyone to a higher standard. We're here to give constructive feedback. We're here to set clear and fair expectations. We're here to say, look, we can all do this together. We can all step forward together. I'm not here because I'm trying to be mean. I'm doing this because I'm trying to bring us all up a notch together. Then importantly, if we find ourselves in that rescuer role of wanting to save or to help everybody else, and essentially sometimes reinforcing that message that they're in that victim role, we can step into a coach role where we actually help them take their power back as saying, okay, so what are your options? Tell me more. How can I support you? Rather than let me fix this here, let me sort this out for you. We can be more of what we do in our role as coaches, asking curious questions, which then means that that person that found themselves as a victim can step into a creator, from why me to what do I want? What are my choices? Taking ownership of the situation, focusing on solutions rather than problems, and importantly, feeling empowered. So that's a really cool thing that we can do if we find ourselves in that point of, I need to fix this, I need to save this situation, that we can actually say, okay, are there some better questions that I can ask? How can I help them to take their power back? So we wanted to really highlight this one from a leadership perspective, that sometimes we can fall into almost feeling as if we need to be the rescuer. We can start to step into being the coach, or if any of us do ever find ourselves in that victim position, which so often, I know I've definitely been there, I know Claire will testify she has as well, that we can go back to the creator space and say, okay, what are my options? Who could help me? What could my next step be? Where can I take my power back here as well? And the second thing that we wanted to just touch on when we're talking about empowerment is the Pygmalion effect as well, which I'm going to hand to Claire to talk about.
Absolutely. So the Pygmalion effect is a psychological phenomenon where higher expectations lead to an improved performance in others. And I want to bring this to life with an example. Let's imagine that we have got 2 new graduate vets, both of them with identical skill sets. The first new graduate vet has a clinical director who thinks, oh, new grads these days, they're just not how they used to be. I just know that they're going to need hand-holding for months. They're not going to be able to handle sole charge. I'm going to have to be double-checking everything. And as a result, this new graduate gets assigned less challenging cases because their clinical director doesn't believe that they have the confidence or the skills to handle it. They are constantly double-checking what that new graduate is doing. And there might be like subtle messaging of doubt in terms of the way that that clinical director is communicating with the new grad. And what's going to happen to that new graduate vet? They're going to feel less confident. They're going to be seeking constant approval because they're aware that they're being watched all the time and everything's being double-checked. And they're probably going to avoid taking those complex cases because they can feel that the clinical director doesn't believe in their abilities. And then what happens is the clinical director goes, see, I knew I was right. I knew that they weren't going to be able to handle the responsibility. And then on the other side, we have the second new graduate vet, and their clinical director thinks very differently. They think this new grad has so much potential. And I know that if I can provide the right support, they're going to be handling more complex cases confidently within months. So what's this new grad's experience? They find that they have gradual exposure to challenges. They're receiving constructive feedback from the clinical director, and the clinical director is also expressing their confidence in their graduate skills and abilities. So this new graduate vet, their confidence starts to grow over time. They're able to seek appropriate support when they need it, because they're not afraid that asking for support is a reflection on their skill set and where they're at. And they have the confidence to tackle like increasingly complex cases. They choose to take them through from the waiting room. And the clinical director is like, this is great. They're developing exactly the way I expected. Because when you believe in another person's potential and treat them as if they are capable of success, they're more likely to rise to the occasion and perform better. So your expectations shape your team performance. So let's start looking for potential rather than limitations. Let's express confidence in our team members, but also provide them with appropriate support and opportunities for growth as well, because we know that we only grow and learn when we have these opportunities provided and we have appropriate challenges. Let's celebrate their progress and their learning and all the small steps, rather than making it be about one final outcome or one big goal. And the power here like really lies in shifting from, oh, they're never going to cope, to how can I help them succeed? What can I be doing here? And it makes sense because it feels good when somebody else believes in us. When someone else believes in you, you start to go, maybe I can do this. Maybe I am able to step up and take on these challenges. I'm sure everyone here has had an experience where someone has really believed in them and it's had such a positive impact.
So we wanted to highlight those two things because often as we're starting to empower others, they can almost be traps that we fall into. First of all, where we might feel that we need to rescue or save people, and actually realizing that we can start coaching and asking questions instead and help them take their power back. And secondly, let's be aware of the expectations that we've got and some of those, like we said, sunken biases of, have I decided already that they're not going to be able to do this? Is there a different way? So back to our 3 parts of empowerment, and we're going to talk about each of these sequentially now. So Claire already said that we can't change other people, but we can start to have an influence, and we can look at role modeling, which is the first thing that we're going to talk about here.
So we can only meet people to the level at which we've met ourselves, and we need to be aware of our own biases, our own patterns, our own tendencies, and all of us have them, right? Because we're humans. So it might be that you reflect and you go, do you know what? I have a tendency to micromanage people. When I assign a task, I'm very aware that I'm wanting to check every single step to make sure it's being done in the way that I want it to be done. It might be that you notice that actually you've got a complete resistance to delegation because you don't trust other people to complete the task, or you just think, do you know what, it'll be quicker and easier for me to do it, so I'm going to take all the responsibility. Or it might be that you have difficulty holding space for other people when they are experiencing really uncomfortable emotions and they express that to you. And sometimes this is about gentle self-reflection and going, okay, what is this actually showing about me as well? Because if you have difficulty holding space for other people's emotions, you probably have difficulty holding space for your own emotions. If you have a real resistance to delegating and you don't trust other people, often it's because actually deep down you don't fully trust yourself. And if you notice that you micromanage, sometimes that can come down to feeling the need to control everything around you in order to feel safe. And none of this is done with judgment or criticism. this is notice with curiosity, because when we can start to understand ourselves on a deeper level, we can start to understand other people on a deeper level. And that's not about diagnosing anyone or saying, oh, I think you've got this trauma going on, but it's simply having a greater awareness to understand that there can be lots of different reasons why people are showing up in the way they do or taking the actions they're taking.
Yeah. And that takes time, right? And that is a process, just like we said right at the beginning, isn't it? We're all going to keep getting to know ourselves. And the second part of role modeling and self-exploration and its impact on empowerment of others is thinking about alignment. So is what we're saying aligned with what we're doing? Are our words aligned with our actions? So consistency is going to provide safety for people, potentially predictability. Let's stick to our word. And also off the back of what Claire said, getting to know ourselves and our values, asking better questions, not only of our team, but of ourselves, starting to empower ourselves first and foremost, so that then we're showing that as an example to the team as well. When we're facing challenging times, how are we looking after ourselves? Who are we asking for support? Are we talking with our team and saying, yeah, things are tricky right now, but what can we do to support each other as a team? Admitting when we've made a mistake, when something hasn't gone to plan. And actually, if we're going to say it's absolutely okay for people to make mistakes because we're human, how are we treating ourselves in that moment if we do make that mistake as well? When we're thinking about role modeling, let's look at the things that we're saying to our team and the things that we're saying externally. Is that something that we're actually in alignment with? And that's really powerful when we can be able to do that as well.
And just a reminder that you're human too, and it's absolutely okay to ask for help. Like, nobody ever gets to a point in life where they know absolutely everything. And it's completely okay to ask for support. In fact, as we said, it's celebrated, whether that is support professionally, whether that is support personally. And we're all going to need this at different points in life. And I'm sure Katie won't mind me sharing that both of us have worked with counsellors, therapists, coaches over the years, and we see that as something to be celebrated, to know that sometimes we do need that external perspective and we need someone to hold space for us as well. So whenever we run a session, this isn't about us saying, here's some great information and tools and take it away, and now you've got everything that you're ever possibly going to need. This is about knowing that, yeah, we are going to have to ask for help at points. Let's encourage ourselves to do that and encourage other people to be able to do that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So then when we come back to our list of the 3 components of how we can start to empower our teams as well, I want to come back to the second point, which is a safe environment. And this could be a topic that is a whole course in itself, right? But we wanted to really highlight why this is important in terms of empowerment for people to take their power back, to build that confidence, to know about their skills, to know their capabilities, their knowledge, understand where they can have autonomy. Safety is really key. So that's what we're going to dive into now. But just first, a quick caveat around that.
So we wanted to share this quote from Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a specialist and known thought leader when it comes to trauma. And that is, safety is not a lack of threat, but it's the presence of connection. And what do we mean by that? When we are experiencing connection with somebody else, it actually helps to regulate our nervous system. And if somebody feels isolated, even if their physical environment is actually safe, that will feel unsafe in their nervous system to be experiencing that isolated feeling. So when we build connection, it helps us to build trust, it helps us to build resilience. And when you're able to model open communication, vulnerability, and empathy, your team are going to feel safer to do the same. It's that self-leadership piece. And we know that people stay in workplaces where they feel belonging, where they feel recognition, where they feel supported. And a big part of that is the presence of connection. It's about your team feeling that they're able to come to you or they're able to go to colleagues and have that connection to be able to share that.
Absolutely. So we wanted to break this down into some actual, actionable, doable steps as well in terms of creating an empowering, safe environment. And absolutely, I always love that quote, just to understand that it isn't that there are no threats, that so much of it is about having that connection, genuine connection. So first things first, as somatic and trauma-informed coaches, we are always going to be talking to you about this, aren't we, Claire?
We bang on about this all the time, multiple times a day, because it is so important. And the first step is really being able to regulate your nervous system. Now, I'm not going to dive into this deeply on this call because, again, this could be a whole session, a whole course in itself. But basically, when we are stressed, our blood flow is redirected from our prefrontal cortex, the logical, rational part of our brain, redirected to our muscles and our heart. It's getting us ready for fight or flight. And we need to be able to show our nervous system that we're safe when we experience this. And one way we can do this, it's on the image there, is to take a deep breath. When we're able to slow down our breathing, when we take deeper breaths, it sends a signal to our nervous system that we are safe in that moment. And it allows us to feel more grounded and more regulated. So how does this play into creating an empowering and safe environment? That might be taking a step back and taking a breath and asking yourself, do you know what, is this the right time to have this conversation with this team member right now? Is there actually a better time that we could be doing this? And when we feel grounded, when our nervous system is regulated, there's co-regulation where the other person's nervous system is going to feel that as well. So when we're able to show up in a way where we feel grounded, where we feel regulated, the other person is going to feel that too. And I'm sure we've all had that experience in different situations. Maybe you've had a client that's come in that has been really frustrated or they've been quite challenging. You've been able to be very calm, very measured, very grounded dealing with them. And you can see that the situation starts to de-escalate and you can see that they start to relax. Likewise, we've all been there where we've walked into a room, everyone else is super stressed and we can feel it as well. And that's because our nervous systems co-regulate. But we cannot tell you how powerful, how important it is to be able to regulate your own nervous system as a leader and the difference that that will make, not just to your experience, but to your team members as well. And this is something that we teach in a lot of depth and a lot of detail in our signature program. We run workshops on this. So if anyone is like, this sounds interesting and I want to learn more, like drop us a message and we can chat about how we can support you with that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see we've got a couple of questions that are popping in. We are going to answer all of those at the end as well. So if you do have more questions, keep them coming and we'll come to those as we go. So also, in terms of creating an empowering and safe environment, we can look at fostering psychological safety. So we've already said this is a huge topic. There are loads of different components to creating a psychologically safe environment, and also bearing in mind that everybody is different. So what feels safe to one person probably might not always feel safe to somebody else because we're complex, all have backgrounds, we all have histories, we're all different. But there are some things that we can start to do. So first thing is looking at the beam discussion around mistakes, learning together. There are so many learnings that you can go and look at in terms of things like debriefing and in terms of actually what do we do if there's been something not go to plan, how do we look at this as a team and understand it from a system perspective rather than as individuals. How can we give everyone a voice? And that's going to look at, are we asking for the thoughts of the people that are maybe the quieter members of the team as well? Is it that we're giving people in meetings opportunities to have the minutes of that meeting ahead of the meeting itself, or for people to give anonymous feedback, or for us to be able to ask for people to give their thoughts in writing? Not everybody is going to feel confident enough in a team to put their hand up and think on the spot when we ask them a question. Maybe it's that some people need a little bit more time to reflect on those things so that so many people can feel as if they take their power back because they're being listened to then. And they're being valued as a member of the team. If they're maybe not one of those people that has the answer come to them straight away and puts the hand up straight away, And also normalizing seeking additional support. So having that signposting towards extra help and support, be that coaching, be that therapy, be that counselling, be that external services through your employee assistance programs, vet life, whatever that looks like, make that a normal part of seeking help. But also seeking additional support in terms of when we're in clinical practice and we're doing clinical work as well. Like, let's make it okay that any of us can ask anybody else at any point, hey, can I get a second opinion on this? What's your thoughts around this? Rather than it being this invisible task that we get to the point where we suddenly know everything and we never have to ask for help, that we see as a pressure for so many people. But I know that many of you on this call right now are really experienced, and you'll agree that we never get to that point of knowing everything. So creating psychological safety can be around normalizing. Let's ask each other for help. Let's discuss when things don't go to plan, because they don't mean that we're terrible at our jobs. It means that we are a human and occasionally things don't go to plan. What can we learn so that we can put things in place as a team to make it less likely that this happens again? Next thing, looking at how can we promote autonomy? How can we help people take their power back to be able to look at taking initiative, taking incentive, going and taking action on something? So there are a few different points on the screen right now, but again, this could be a whole session in itself. Providing resources and frameworks for decision making, looking at being available for support without that tendency or that wish to micromanage and feel like we have to lie out every step for somebody. So let's talk about the what and the why rather than so much the how. Let's look at mirroring back people's skills. We're going to talk more to this in a minute, but let's remind people what they are good at, what their strengths are, because often people forget. They just think, well, everybody's good at this. This is nothing special. We can look at celebrating and actually, you know, if somebody does problem solve or takes initiative, like, let's really reflect that back and say, well done for that. Ask everybody else's thoughts. Like, what do you think before we give answers? And finally, one of the Brené Brown quotes that I love is this idea that clear is kind. How can we be really clear what we expect our teams to do, where we're happy for them to take initiative, where we'd like them to check? What are some of the things that we can give them power to go and find out their how or their way of doing something? And we talk about what we want the outcome to be as well. So promoting autonomy can give people their power back as well, because they say, oh, look, I can find a way that I can do this. And often, in a very humbling way, they'll find incredible ways to do things that maybe might not have initially come to mind, even if they're not the way that we've always done things. So as we come back again to our list of 3, we wanted to talk about our final part, which is between our interactions with people and the encouragement that we're giving. So not just the environment we create and the work that we're doing on us, but empowering others can be about how we are interacting with them too. So this is one of our favorite quotes, isn't it, Claire?
It is. And it's, we see and reflect back your highest potential, even when you can't see it yourself. Let's hold people in their highest regards. And if that's something that feels challenging, we get to step back and be curious about that and go, that's really interesting that I'm finding it difficult to hold people or hold my team members in their highest regards. Let's get some support around that to understand it, because when we're able to do that, as we've seen with the Pygmalion effect, people perform better when they can feel that you have confidence in them and their skill set. People are going to grow and they're going to develop, and they're going to want to stay part of a team where they feel that they're valued and recognised, and there's a sense of belonging there as well. So this is exactly what we do with Vet Empowered, with every person that we work with, whether that's in group coaching or one-to-one coaching or workshop. We're always going to see and reflect back your highest potential, even if you don't see it yourself. Katie and I have both been there when we've had our own coaches hold us in our highest regard and see our potential when we've been going through challenging times. It's so, so powerful to be able to do this.
And we're going to talk more in a second to how we can do that. I see that someone's asked in the Q&A, how do you empower the underconfident or anxious vet? And that's just what we're going to dive into now as well, because I'm sure we can all agree we've all had circumstances, or maybe that's been us sometimes, where we can see that someone is fantastic at their job, but they just can't see it. And that's where just what Claire shared on this slide is, let's keep remembering that we can reflect that back. And there are some other things that we can talk about as well. And I'd importantly say, you don't have to do this on your own. In terms of supporting someone that feels underconfident and they share that, there are other support systems that can come in, like coaching, like therapy, like counselling, that can help as well as asking those questions. As we said, when we looked at the Cartman drama triangle, sometimes we can feel as if we need to come in and save this situation, but sometimes we can ask better questions, like, how can I help support you? What do you need? What are the worries? What are the concerns? Is there anything that we can do from this side of things? And again, going back to those 3 parts, we looked at creating that psychologically safe environment too. A lot of the times people feel anxious or underconfident if they're worried about, well, what happens if something doesn't go to plan? And if they're seeing time and time again, if there are mistakes or things don't go to plan, actually, these people are supported and they're looked after, and it's acknowledged that mistakes do feel uncomfortable, but what can we all learn as a team from it? Then slowly they're those corrective experiences that they've probably never had before, to see that actually it is okay to have something not go to plan. Nobody goes to work saying, today I'm going to make a mistake. This is a really great opportunity for things to go wrong. People always come from a good space most of the time. So let's dive into some of those other things that we can do, especially if we want to empower our team members, and particularly looking around that underconfident and anxious side of things as well. So Claire, I'll let you dive in first.
Absolutely. And the first thing that we can do is practice active listening. And this is really listening to understand, not just to respond. Because we've all been there, right? When we've had a conversation with somebody and they're just jumping in to try and say what they want to say. That isn't active listening. Active listening is when we can take a step back, really hold that space, give someone like our full attention, showing them that you're engaged, you're hearing what they're saying. It might be that you reflect back or you paraphrase. So what I'm hearing is that helps the other person to feel like they're being heard and understood. It might be that you ask open-ended questions like, could you tell me more about that challenge that you've experienced, or what's been going on for you? I mean, I think it goes without saying we want to avoid interrupting people. Nobody feels like they're being listened to when they're being interrupted, but also being able to acknowledge the other person's emotions and to validate how they're feeling, even if we've never experienced that ourselves. That might sound like, that's really challenging. And at the end of the day, people just want to be heard. People just want to know that they're being listened to. And when we're able to do this, when we can actively listen, it helps to build trust. It helps to build that connection. And like we were saying, like, safety is built through connection as well. So this is something really, really powerful that we can be doing, not just with our team members, but with our clients as well. This can be really powerful to just actively listen to what it is that they're needing to say to us.
Yeah, definitely. And the next point is reflecting back people's strengths and asking about what their goals are as well. So often if we've got somebody that is underconfident or somebody that doesn't believe in themselves, sometimes they don't realize that something that they're good at is something that they are good at. Same goes for adding in feedback as well, and continuous feedback, rather than feedback being something that just happens once a year in an appraisal or every 6 months. Actually feedback that is timely, that is genuine, and looking at different ways that we can give feedback. Again, that could be another session in itself as well. But going back onto Claire's point of being curious and asking questions and actively listening as well, sometimes it's easy for us to dive straight in and say, well, absolutely, that's not true. You're brilliant at your job. Sometimes we can say, okay, so tell me a little bit more about what you are worried about. How can I help support you with that as well? So feedback absolutely has a place. Asking about what's important to them moving forward. Like, what are they working towards? How can you help them set that goal? Because that gives them power back again. And we can help look at how can we give them resources towards that? What do they need? You might have team members that are really interested in a particular area of clinical practice and they want to start running clinics around that. How are we creating those spaces to understand what people would like to do moving forward and to empower them in that way as well? Reflecting back strengths. There are so many different ways that we can do this. I know that some of you have worked in teams where maybe they've done personality profiling or done some of the strength assessment tools. We work with teams to help them figure out their strengths so that people can then say, oh, okay, I can take my power back because this is something that I know is really in my skill set, and this is where I fit within this high performing team. We do not have to be good at every single thing, because actually, let's just look at doubling down on the things that we are really good at. Yes, there are things that we can work on, but how do they all fit into the team together as well? Then our next one.
And the next one, as you've heard us say multiple times already this session, is to be curious rather than judgmental. And this applies to other people as well. If a team member comes to you to have a conversation, or they're having a challenge, or maybe they've behaved in a way that's like really out of character, let's be curious about what's going on for them rather than judging them, because everybody has a reason for the actions that they take or the behaviors that they're showing. And when we can start to be curious and we can start to try and understand their experience, we've got more chance of being able to make positive change moving forwards as well. When the other person feels that you're curious rather than judgmental, they're more likely to be able to share with you and connect and to be able to build that trust.
And our final one that we'd add on here as well is let's dare to delegate. Often, delegation and empowerment are slightly different topics, but part of helping people to realize, oh my gosh, I am trusted to do something. There are different ways that I can learn, maybe the ways that work for me, and having a clear outcome, and also for us to build trust in our team. Delegation is really valuable. So when we've given this talk previously, we'll always say, look, we could sit here and talk you through how to delegate things, going through the acronyms that you'll find out there. There are fantastic resources in so many different spaces, but often we can find that easily. The challenge to delegation is often our own resistances to delegating. As Claire said, when we talked about we can only meet others at the depth at which we've met ourselves, sometimes we can look internally a little bit at, like, what is my resistance to delegating here? Is it actually because this person that I'm going to delegate to on paper isn't qualified or skilled to do that? And maybe that's a reasonable reason for us not to delegate. Or actually, is it that we've decided it would be quicker for us to do it ourselves? Or is it that we want to look at, okay, I'm going to be prepared to build trust here. I'm going to have an open conversation with them so that they can have some power back on their side as well from a delegation front. So we can look at how we can create workplaces where people can dare to relearn the lessons they need and dare to remember their values. So when we're looking at empowering people, we had that question around how do we empower the underconfident or anxious vet? Anxiety and underconfidence usually has like quite a history behind it. And often we've learnt lessons at some point that we're not good enough to do this, or maybe there are some limiting beliefs that people have picked up about their own abilities or capabilities or what success means. And if we start to create a workplace where people can learn, it's okay to grow. It's okay to do things one step at a time. It's okay not to be perfect because perfect doesn't exist. It's okay for us to redefine success. It's safe for me to talk about something not going to plan. It's safe for me to ask for help. Then they can start relearning those things, because often people have learned at some point that it's not safe to ask for help. Maybe they've learned at some point that mistakes are really bad and they're scary and we should completely avoid them, and the aim in life is to never ever make one. Maybe they've learned that confidence should be this feeling of being 100% ready for anything and thinking that nobody else ever doubts themselves. But imagine if you got a leader who said, you know what, I'm going to go and seek some help with that because I'm not actually sure, or I'm going to have a go at this. I'm about 80% of the way there with confidence towards this, but I've got a backup plan. I know how I'm going to step forward. All of these things can start help creating that workplace where people can dare to relearn the lessons that they needed in the first place. They can dare to see their own value. They're having feedback reflected back to them, but also importantly, remembering that piece around additional support. Because as leaders, sometimes we can feel that pressure that I must be the only one to make them confident in this moment. It must be on my hands to make this person 100% confident and help them navigate their anxious experiences. But there are so many other people that can help if they're willing and if they're open to that support as well. So we just wanted to remind you, didn't we, Claire, that actually empowering others is one of the most rewarding things you're ever going to do.
It really is. It is so fulfilling and so rewarding to see somebody else start to flourish and to be able to reach their full potential and to see them believing in themselves. Like when you can say to someone else, I really believe in you, and then you start to see that shift, it's absolutely incredible. And as you can imagine, at Vet Empowered, this is something that we're doing every single day, is empowering others, but it is super, super rewarding. And this is just a very, very small example of the number of testimonials that we've had from people who have worked with us. So yeah, it's incredible. We absolutely love this work.
We do. And one of the things that we find is we start helping give other people their power back by asking curious questions, by being predictable, compassionate, by being encouraging. This doesn't mean that we're being pushovers. We can still make sure that we've got a standard that we'd like people to come to, but being curious and kind is one of the most amazing things we'll do. But equally, we might find that we empower ourselves along the way as well. We might be able to gently let go of some of those tendencies to want to fix everything for everyone and start to ask more curious questions. And we might start to learn a bit more about ourselves as well. I know certainly we've helped hundreds and hundreds of people on a one-to-one and group basis in this profession to rebuild confidence, refine themselves, reconnect with what's important to them. And it is hugely rewarding. So we're more than happy to answer some questions. We also appreciate that people might prefer to reach out individually. So we've got on the screen our email address. You can drop us an email. You can come onto one of our social media accounts. You can message us on there. You might be watching the recording afterwards and you've got questions. We're more than happy to answer those for you as well. We did just want to take a moment to talk about the fact that at the end of this month, excitingly, we do have a one-day event, which is all about building balance for people of the profession and stepping forward with confidence. So if anyone's got team members that might benefit from that as well, you can scan the QR code and anyone that's been on this webinar gets 20% off with the code PetsApp20. It should already be applied on the QR code as well. That is a whole day of CPD. We've got some incredible guest speakers. We've got Aoife Smith, psychotherapist. We've got David Bidler, who runs Physiology First University, Chloe Hannigan from Vet Yogi. We've got Z Yogi, who is a mountaineer and a self-defense trainer. So many amazing people, as well as Claire and I leading you through the day as well. But we would love to know if there are any more questions that popped in. We've talked a little bit around empowering the underconfident or anxious vet, and hopefully we've touched on some points for that. But we can certainly take a couple more minutes answering that a little bit more in full as well. So, Claire, do you want to add to anything else that we've talked about so far of empowering the underconfident or anxious vet? Because we know this is so many people that are out there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think something that can be really important is reminding them of their resourcefulness, because something that we see so often in the new grads that they work with is they put so much pressure on themselves to know all the answers. I feel like I don't know enough. I feel like I should know the answer straight away and I should always know what to do. And what can be really empowering for them is when they're reminded, you don't need to know all the answers. You just need to be resourceful. Like if you know where you can look that answer up, if you can know who you can ask for help, whether that's another member in the team, whether that's somebody externally, whether that's the local referral centre, you will see just the look of relief on their face when they're like, oh, I can just take that pressure off. And also the reminder that none of us ever know all the answers in clinical practice. You can be 30 years out and you're going to see a case and be like, I'm not sure what's going on with this. So let's remind those that feel anxious and underconfident, they don't need to know all the answers, but they get to be resourceful. And that's what they teach us when we go through vet school, right? It's not about teaching us all the answers. It's about teaching us like a process, taking things step by step and knowing where to look for help when we need it. But we know that's a really, really common pressure that comes up.
Absolutely. And I think we said this already, but the additional support options as well, if people need that too. Feedback, telling them that we believe in them. We didn't talk about it in this session, but actually it's a really useful concept for us to keep in mind as well, is the idea of our comfort zone, our stretch zone, and our panic zone. So this is the idea, if you imagine 3 concentric circles. So you've got the middle circle is the comfort zone. That's where there are things that we or other people feel comfortable doing. They don't feel particularly scary because we've done them so many times before. Our brain has enough evidence to say, this is not scary, this is fine, this is not dangerous, this is okay. If we take a step out of that comfort zone, we can end up in one of two places. If it's a bit of a step, a bit of a stretch, we can end up in the stretch zone where people or us will feel comfortably uncomfortable. Maybe you're like, oh, this feels new, it feels a bit different, but I'm not absolutely terrified. If we take too much of a step out of that comfort zone, past the stretch zone, we can end up in the panic zone, which is where, again, our nervous system says, this is really, really, really dangerous. We just need to do everything we can to make sure they get out of here as soon as possible. Now, as you can imagine from the way I've described those, it's actually not particularly useful for people to be in the panic zone. They don't learn very well there. All that we learn is let's avoid doing anything like this ever again. So we can start to think of that model for our individual team members and ask, like, how can we help this be more of a stretch and less of a panic? So that might be breaking things down into steps. It might be reminding them of support that's available, reminding them to be resourceful. That might be having someone come in and educate the team around their nervous system and emotional regulation. That's something that we've done plenty of times with lots of teams before as well, so that they can be operating in that stretch zone where actually they are set up for new neural connections being made in the brain, new learning. It's a really cool zone to be in terms of learning and understanding why that might feel a little bit different. And that doesn't mean it's a fault. So we can start to think, how can I help my team members to feel as if it's a stretch rather than a panic? And that comes from conversation too, because everyone's different and everyone's different on different days. Some days it might be that something feels very much in the stretch zone and it's fine. But if someone's had a day where there are many different things going on in life and everything feels like a lot, we might need to approach that in a different way as well. So I'm just looking at the questions that we've got here. So I'm going to check off the one in terms of empowering the underconfident or anxious vet. Please do let us know if you'd like to add to that. And then I know we had a question come part way through, and I think this must have been to do with one of the slides. So please do feel free to give us a bit more information around this if you'd like to as well, which says, how do you do this in reverse? I'm a senior vet who's experienced ageism in my development. And first of all, I just want to acknowledge and say, I appreciate that would feel really uncomfortable. And I'm sorry that you've experienced that as well. And just that reminder that all of us can grow all the way through our career. And actually, we can start to look at, as you said, maybe it was on the Pygmalion effect slide, I think that we'd spotted a hand that popped up at that point as well, is for us to start to think about what we need. And then if we feel confident enough to go and have that conversation with our leader or whoever else is in the practice, or have conversations with other team members and be curious as to their view and then explain our side of things as well, because we're all going to keep growing, aren't we? I know you add to that, Claire, as well. I'm just going to check that off as a question. But if you do want to add more, if that was on a particular slide, well, we can add more context to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just going to echo that, Katie, in terms of when we're able to recognize and identify, okay, this is what I need to be able to grow and develop, and then being able to have that conversation to let our team know or to let other people know. And again, to acknowledge that it's an uncomfortable experience and it's difficult when we want to grow and we want to develop and we feel like we're facing barriers with that as well. But yeah, if you'd like to share a little bit more context, we can speak more fully to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything that we've said here as well applies to everyone at all stages in their career. I know we've talked a lot about new graduates through this as well, but we are all human. We're all going to keep growing. We're all going to have points where we're going through being a bit more in the stretch zone. We're going to have points where we have challenges come up. We're going to move to new workplaces. We're all going to have mistakes and things that don't go to plan, even as leaders, especially as leaders as well. So just to acknowledge everything that we talk about can be applicable to all of us at all points as well. So I'm just going to give a minute if anybody does want to ask anything else as well. We've absolutely loved spending the last hour with you. So thank you so much for your time. If you do have follow-up questions, please do absolutely let us know if there's anything additional. Oh, I can see. Can we pop the previous screen on, please? Absolutely, we can do. Here we go. Lots of questions. Thank you. I just needed to scroll up rather than scroll down. So we'll go through these for you as well. Yeah, we've popped the previous screen on for you. Hopefully that's the correct one to reach out to us. I tried, but it was corporate, and I'd be happy to speak to you in person. Absolutely. Drop us an email across. We can talk to you more about that, give us a little bit more context. More than happy. And then I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to hand it to you, Claire. So, and then I'll add some bits to it. How do you foster a good peer relationship with senior leaders who are most concerned with business management rather than people management?
Good question. My answer to this would be trying to take a we approach rather than kind of a us and them approach, and to be curious about like, what does a good outcome look like for them, and being able to share how that kind of translates for you. And I'm not sure whether like you're currently in practice. Again, I don't know if you want to add any more context to this, but I think when we can approach other people and say, okay, this is like what we're moving towards, how can we work together to get here, and create some understanding in terms of perhaps the expectations that are being placed on them and what would be a good outcome for them, and then being able to share it from your side as well. Because I know from my experience of being in leadership positions, often the friction and the tension comes up is when both parties just don't have an understanding of maybe the challenges that are coming up on each side and what a good outcome looks like. And I think that when you're able to foster a relationship where you can create that understanding and the other person kind of feels seen, heard and understood, and then they're able to do the same, that's when you can kind of work towards solutions. So please do, if you want to add any more context, again, if you want to drop us an email, because as I said, I'm not quite sure if you're in practice and maybe there's senior leaders that are non-clinical and they've never been in practice and you feel that they don't have an understanding of what's kind of going on the front line. But I would definitely say taking like a we approach and being curious. And I know that sometimes there might be people that are resistant to that. So again, this is kind of context dependent, but generally if people feel like they're part of a team and it's collaborative, it's much more likely to get the outcome that we want rather than it's us and them. And that applies to clients as well, right? We know that when we can be collaborative with our clients, we're much more likely to get sort of better outcomes.
Yeah, I definitely echo all of that. And coming back to the active listening part as well, is that often, if we imagine, I'm sure plenty of you have seen that diagram where you've got someone stood at one side of a 6 and someone stood at the other side of it, looks like a 9, and they're both arguing it's a 6, it's a 9. And actually sometimes when we can just curiously understand from their side, and also, like Claire said, coming together, what's the shared purpose here? The other thing that I'd say is there is so much evidence out there as well in terms of everything that we've spoken about here, from looking after team members as humans first and the impact of that on the business too. Sometimes bringing along evidence can be really valuable, or even saying, I'm curious, I've seen this, I'd be really interested to see what you think about it as well, this evidence. How could we curiously apply this to what we're doing? And then how can we look back and see what impact this has on that shared goal that we're working towards as well? Because often it might be that someone has a belief that actually none of this stuff is that important. And then we like evidence as a profession, right? And we might say, actually, here are a few papers that suggest that doing this could have an impact. I'd be really interested to see, can we all have a discussion about this and see what we all think? So yeah, hopefully that answers the question for you. So has anybody else got any final questions they'd like to add in? Please do pop them in the Q&A for us. We'll give you another second or two. But as Claire said already, please do reach out to us. You've got our email address, hello@vetempowered.com. We're more than happy to chat to you off the back of this. If you've got any team members that you'd like potentially a little bit more support with, we're more than happy to discuss as well. Anything that we do at Vet Empowered, whether that's one-to-one or whether that's through our group program, we always do a discovery call primarily so we can make sure that this is the right thing for somebody, and we're never afraid to signpost somebody elsewhere. Something that's really important to us, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure that people get the right support at the right time. So if there is anybody in your team that you think would benefit from some coaching, you can reach out to us, you can pass on our details, and we're always happy to chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, everybody. I know that nobody can write anything in the chat box. So if you do have anything final to say, please do pop it in the Q&A. We'd be more than happy to answer that, or to see any comments that you've got. I can see we've got some clapping.
Yay.
So thank you so much for
Sparkly
that.
hearts, love it.
Oh, lovely. Thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. We have absolutely loved it. Please do follow up if you're watching the recording. The invitation is still there. You're more than welcome to get in touch with us to send us any questions across as well. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. See you later. Bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.
At PetsApp, we help you reduce missed calls and save you time by making your client engagement efforts more efficient. But we can't achieve this unless we get you where your pet owners are. We do this by setting you up with a free listing on our Find a Vet page, creating a widget for your website, and providing you with both a web and app version of PetsApp for you to access our full kit of client communication tools, keeping you at the heart of their pet care journey. And using PetsApp couldn't be simpler for them too, with features such as two-way SMS, text chat, and a click on-off WhatsApp integration inside the app. They can communicate with you in whichever way suits you both, without even downloading the app. We then surface all this in one convenient location for you and your team on the PetsApp dashboard and in the PetsApp Veterinary Team member app, making it super efficient for you to respond via the web, your website, PetsApp Copilot, SMS, or WhatsApp, all in one single location. And that's not all. You can collaborate with team members, use template messages, and even generate automated campaigns with our advanced CRM hub. All this combined will reduce call rates by 85%, increase revenue by as much as 20%, and save you and your team 3 hours every single day.